All right, here we go.
Okay. Yeah, sorry it took you
Oh,
too
no, no, you're
long.
fine. You're fine.
I didn't know it was quite as complex a story, but it's an interesting
Yeah, it's a
story.
long story. Then I'm sorry you missed the long story, guys. I probably could have turned the mic on and could have shared that whole story with you the entire time, but nope. See, some stories are just for Roger. That's just how it goes. All right, welcome into the After Schrock, guys. Hope everybody. Let me do my audio check here real quick. I hope everybody can hear me. Yes, we look pretty decent on audio, actually, so that's good. We'll give everyone a couple moments to get connected here because I took a little time to actually get here myself. I wouldn't imagine that I could fault people for taking a little bit longer to get here than normal. So I'm sorry it took me a little bit longer. Roger and I were having a conversation there, and it it got into like details and things and talking about life and stuff, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, it's been like 10 minutes. I really need to get the aftershock going. All right, good to have you, Mitch. Good morning, Mary. Roger's here. Roger and Karen are both here, so we'll just let, like I said, we'll let everybody get connected, and then we'll get started. So on the aftershock today, of course, anything you want to talk about, just bring it up in the comments, and we can talk about it. Um, I try not to be overtly political in the aftershock. Yeah, there's a saying. There's the Lincoln Independent Business Association, and they have a saying on their podium at their luncheons that they have. It says get into politics or get out of business. In other words, politics and life are inseparable. Politics is just relationships, and people banding together to influence the relationships of others. And so, in its purest form anyway. In its dirtiest form, it's something else entirely. But you can't separate it entirely from what's going on in the world around you, because you're being influenced by it as well. And so when we talk about like the Chinese balloon thing, you know, I'm going to focus instead of focusing on the fact that it appears that we didn't know that the Chinese balloons were coming overhead, or if we did know, we didn't care. Or that maybe it happened a couple times during the Trump administration and the military just didn't tell Trump because maybe they were afraid that he would do something crazy with China or something. Who knows? Who knows what Orange Man's going to do? Oh God, who knows? So all of a sudden, one traverses the country. A local news reporter spots it, puts it on the news. All of a sudden, it becomes a big thing. It starts trending on Twitter, which no longer censors, by the way. And then we never noticed how it never really got any traction on Facebook or Instagram. Interesting. But I was all over Twitter trending. Hashtag Chinese spy balloon was a trending tag. And then by the time it crossed the entire country, everyone in the world knew about it. And the Biden administration had to shoot it down, and they did. And now they're recovering it. So, okay. So subsequent to that, after the fact, we talked about that all last week. After the fact of that happening, now all of a sudden there's like zero balloon tolerance, right? We shoot it down. And that's the thing. If we launched our own balloons, guys, I mean, and we actually got one shot down, wouldn't that be cool? Like the U.S. government fired a sidewinder at my balloon. Boom. Yeah, the FBI comes looking for you. They'll put you in prison for going to the Capitol. Imagine what they'll do for a balloon. It's crazy stuff. So anyway, these two subsequent balloons, traveling at roughly 40,000 feet. They're a danger to civilian air traffic, so we decided to shoot them down immediately. Okay, so let me break that down Barney style for you. A balloon traveling at 40,000 feet, in theory, is traveling at an altitude that an airliner can travel. Okay, so is it a danger to air traffic? Possibly, yeah, possibly. So I'm going to do this in real time with you. Um, what altitude do Arctic weather balloons travel? Because there are so many planes flying through the Arctic. Okay. Yes, I don't. Weather balloon. Uh, 15 to 45 kilometers in altitude. Okay, so 15 kilometers to feet is 49,000 feet. So in the 40 to 49,000 foot range would be the low end of the altitude chain for a weather balloon. China's having a great time with this. China's trying to meme it up. The U.S. is fighting climate change by shooting down weather balloons. Go U.S. I think that these last two things are probably not spy balloons. These are probably actually weather balloons we're shooting down. So we have zero balloon tolerance now because if there's a balloon, we're going to shoot it down. Yeah. So I get it. At least they're taking airspace seriously now. So that's a good thing. So try to find the good things and the bad. But now we're shooting down anything. There's a flock of geese. You know, they're down. Geese down. You know, those could have been EMP geese. You know, that's right. Those things exist. The U.S. government, a lot of people don't know this, but the U.S. government did an experiment in the 50s that killed all the birds. And they had to replace the birds with robots. So every bird that you see is actually a robot. And once in a while, the government knows that this is a very implausible thing. So once in a while, it'll take like a genetically engineered body of a dead bird and like throw it on the ground for your cat to eat. I'm telling you, this is real stuff. You ever see one of these birds fly into your window? Yeah. Who could survive that? Bong! And then it flies away. Come on, it's got to be a robot. In all seriousness, they're not robots, guys. In all seriousness, though, this whole thing of shooting down every high-altitude object, it's almost like when you have one Chinese spy balloon, it gets everyone in an uproar. And I mentioned during their first program, and a little bit of the After Schrock kind of leaked out there, that it feels like something has changed. And I don't just mean like something has changed in China relations or whatever. I feel like something has changed in the populace. The people did not like China flying a surveillance balloon over the United States, whether it was collecting data or not collecting data, whether it was disabled or enabled, whether it was a threat or it wasn't a threat. The U.S. population responded viscerally to that. In other words, you know, get off my land, boy. You know, that literally, it was like, we're going to shoot it down. We got to make them pay. I mean, it was, oh my gosh, right? But then you turn around and you say, but look at all the stuff that's happening every day that nobody even raises a fuss about. 700,000 illegal Chinese citizens immigrated into the United States through the southern border this year. Those are the ones we know about. Chinese companies are buying up agricultural land all across the United States. Now, I'm old enough that I remember back in the 80s, all the old people. I don't know, what'd you call old people before baby boomers? Before you said, hey, boomer, what did they call people before that? Hey, old man? I don't know. Japan was going to buy up the whole country. Japan's buying up the whole country. They own everything. There were movies made. I remember there was a great movie. I forget what it was called, but it was about Americans. The Japanese bought an American car manufacturing plant. It was losing money. They were going to shut it down. And these Americans, with their can-do attitude, showed the Japanese that they could take this plant and they could hit the goal and make 1 million cars. And the Japanese learned that it was about the spirit of the American worker. And some of the cars maybe fell apart when they were driven because they weren't put together quite properly. But, you know, it was the spirit of the American worker that wins the story. And so that was the environment I grew up in. So now here we have China's buying up all the farmland. China does need the farmland. They need the farm exports. They cannot import enough food. They can't produce enough food for their own people. They have to import. They're a net importer of agriculture. That's not going to change anytime soon. China now farms more corn domestically than they do rice. So there's a change happening in China's agricultural environment. And they could actually be buying up agricultural land to farm actual agricultural products and ship them back to China. Makes sense. Cut out the middleman. You cut out the American farmer, you don't have to anyone you have to screw over on the price of your agricultural goods. You can just literally sell them to the government of China, from the government of China, from a state-owned agency, and yay, nobody complains. And you got to have a place to store all that grain, so you put up some silos. And on the top of those silos, some farmers know that you can make some money by letting people put things on your land, like windmills or surveillance collection arrays, or especially on farms that are really, really close to defensive locations, like air bases and things like that. What surrounds virtually every U.S. military installation in the country? Farmland. So yeah, that's kind of a concern, right? Just like it was a concern back in the day that Japan was going to buy up all of America and they would own everything, and then what would we do then? Well, they didn't, because the money kind of ran out and the party ended. So is this the beginning of the end of the Chinese party? People just don't realize that without China, you don't have prescriptions. You don't have antibiotics without China. So you want to go to war with China? I hope you don't need an antibiotic, because if you cut yourself on a rusty nail, you're going to die. Eat some moldy bread, because that's about as good as it's going to get. Because we don't have the ability to manufacture the pill casings. We can make the antibiotics. We can't make the pill casings. And because we're a global supply chain now, it's almost like an interdependent competitiveness, where we're all dependent on each other for something. And China's dependent on America too, if nothing else, for farmland. It's all interconnected, but at the same time, China understands that they're playing a long game. And there's this Thaddeus trap that I've been reading about, where basically, why was it Greece and Sparta that went to Rome or something, or went to war against each other? Well, because one power was an established world power, and the other one was an ascending power. And the established power was threatened by the ascending power, and the ascending power saw it as their place to supplant the existing power. And that's literally the situation with the U.S. and China right now. The U.S. is a dominant world superpower. China is an up-and-coming superpower, very capable, but not on the level of the United States. At least that's what we're all told and we're all led to believe. Yet, if you flew a weather balloon over China, how long would it take them to shoot it down? If you flew it over Beijing, if you flew it over President Xi's house, they would shoot it down on top of his house. We'll build him a new house. No biggie. It doesn't matter. You don't fly balloons over China. We don't care. It's a birthday party balloon. We don't fly it over China. If I send my balloons up and they happen to cross the Atlantic and wander into China, it's going to get shot down. And not by a Chinese civilian with a gun or a Florida man with his beer bottle. It's going to get shot down. And it's because China's paying attention. So these balloons that we saw recently, the last two that we've seen, do you know that NORAD did not detect them until they came over the horizon? They were detected by ground-based radar as they crossed the horizon. So apparently everything that we have is engineered to detect missiles, to detect fast-moving, re-entering devices. It just didn't occur to anybody that someone would use a medieval balloon to attack, I guess, because we don't detect those until they're within eyesight of the land, until they've crossed the horizon. So what that means, the Earth is curved. So when you have a radar, it's going, right? And as the Earth curves away, the radar can't detect what's over here on this side of the globe. So as your balloon comes over the horizon, the radar detects it all of a sudden, and hey, there's a balloon there. That's how they're detecting it. I had another news report that was really an interesting one, actually. Fox had some guy on, I forget his name. He was a naval Top Gun aviator that had over 1,000 carrier landings under his belt, and he was an F-14 pilot. And he came out and said, listen, part of what's going on here is that, he said that the pilots in the F-22s knew exactly what they were looking at because the radars are so advanced on those planes. He goes, they are such worlds away from what we had in an F-14. And that's part of the reason why you're getting all these unexplained sightings of unidentified aircraft all of a sudden. It's not because they're suddenly more prevalent. It's because the radar technology that's been deployed is so much more advanced we can detect them now. And, it's kind of funny because, we're hearing about these cylindrical silver things getting shot down, and it just makes you think about the Tic Tac UFO video thing, right? So Fox actually, on one of their news segments, was running the Tic Tac UFO footage of the Tic Tac UFO for the spy balloon story, because I guess that's what they look like. So all these sightings of unidentified objects in the sky and cigar-shaped objects floating through the sky and doing things, were they just Chinese balloons the whole time? I mean, China didn't just start their balloon stuff yesterday or the day before. This balloon floated over here. I mean, how long does it take to float across the Pacific Ocean and float. Okay, if you were going to drive from the northern tip of Alaska to South Carolina, and you decided to drive at 75 miles an hour nonstop the entire way, how long would it take you to traverse the entire nation? I mean, that balloon did it in about the same amount of time. So, I don't know. It's one of those interesting things where I just have this feeling like something has changed, and I don't want to be alarmist about it because it's not like hey, something has changed, go buy Clorox wipes. Get Clorox wipes and toilet paper now. Go, go, go. Not quite like that, but something has changed in the way that something changed after the great financial crisis. No one at the time knew that we would have 0% interest rates for damn near 15 years. And in Europe would have negative interest rates. That savers would be penalized, that all the lessons that your grandfather and your father taught you about saving your money didn't make sense anymore. Because if you save your money, you actually lose your money. Wow, it's like burn the village to save it. Save your money to lose your money. I'm just amazed now. I'm walking through Hy-Vee and the Cobalt Credit Union is there like, now you can get a money market account and earn 4.25% interest. And I'm like, 4.25, that's amazing. I'm used to seeing like 0.1% interest. Then I walked through the grocery store yesterday. It's up to 5%. So in a matter of a month, it went from 4.25 to 5. Now we're hearing that maybe, okay, so inflation, first of all, the December numbers, the numbers are released and then they're adjusted in subsequent months. That's one of the reasons we had such a great job report, guys, is that job report was the combination of revisions of every single job report going back to June of 22. So they said in every job report, every month from June of 2022 to present, we screwed up and reported fewer jobs than we should have. Therefore, look at the massive jump in numbers this report. Bam! But if you dig into those numbers in the report, what you found was, according for those numbers to be true, we would have had to add over 10 million part-time jobs to the economy in a month. It is obvious that those numbers were not accurate for 1 month of data. Somebody's playing around with the numbers somewhere. Okay, it's the government, they play with numbers, we get it. We're used to that from China. You don't trust numbers that come out of China because you assume that they're all goal-seeked, right? China will have 7% growth, and if they are -2, guess what? We missed our goal. We were only 5% instead of 7. Oh, try harder. Well, you expect the U.S. is giving you real data because we have a press that will cover the data, that will dig into the data, that will figure out. Why do I have to read Zero Hedge to hear this? On the 2 hours after the report's released, the stock market's going north because they're like, this is a great sign. The jobs are so strong that the tightening is over with. We're not going to have a recession. In fact, the Fed's probably going to pivot and lower interest rates later this year. Everything is awesome, man. Why would the Fed lower interest rates if everything is awesome? That doesn't make any sense. You need things to be bad for the Fed to lower rates. So bad news is good news again. But this is good news, and in this case, good news was good news. Because good news is good news for bad news. It makes no sense. Like, this is the thing I deal with. Like, I see all these different things and I read all these different stories, and when I add them all together, it doesn't make sense. Something's not true. So then you look at motivations. Who is motivated to make things not true here? Well, Wall Street obviously wants to have a stock market rally. The bankers, whether or not it goes up or down, they just want to make sure that they're levered in the right direction. You know what I mean? The Federal Reserve has a really big problem because we've got like $31 trillion of debt. No one seems to even think about it. That debt gets interest paid on it. So as rates go up, interest on the debt goes up. There's a ceiling to which the Fed is going to not be able to raise rates anymore because it's going to destroy the U.S. government's ability to operate. You can't pull a Volcker and go to 18% interest rates. You'd bankrupt the country in a year. The government of the country. You just can't. Inflation would not be crushed by that. They'd have to print money for the government to spend, which would cause more inflation. So you can't do that. And then in the geopolitical realm, you see stuff like the Nordstream pipelines. So, who benefited from the Nordstream pipelines getting blown up? The main beneficiary from the get-go was the U.S. because we export LNG, first of all. So, yeah, people will need our exports. The value of the exports will go up. Number two, Russia gets revenue from selling energy to Europe. So, if Russia suddenly was no longer able to sell energy to Europe, that means countries like Germany would be much more willing to impose sanctions on Russia because there wouldn't be this cudgel over their head of we're going to cut off your energy because the energy's already been cut off. So there was a lot of, if you look at motivations again, you can look at the motivation to do something and really get a good idea of who's behind it. Now, they tried to tell you it was a Russian psyops campaign where Russia blew up their own pipelines. That made absolutely no sense to me. Like, why would Russia blow up pipelines that are earning Russia money in an environment where those pipelines give Russia control over Western nations that the U.S. needs to be on board with sanctions? Why would they give up leverage? Doesn't make sense. So now what we're hearing, there's a reporter. Let me get his name here. I want to Seymour Hersh. And Seymour Hersh reported on his blog. Now this guy is a recognized reporter. He's not just some blogger dude. Let me see if I can get any of his. American investigative journalist Seymour Hersh. So what Hersh says happened to the Nord Stream pipelines was that the U.S. Navy's Diving and Salvage Center in Florida planted C4 explosives on 3 Nord Stream pipelines in June of 2022. So Joe Biden said, if Russia invades Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 will not happen. We will see to that. So how does the U.S. stop a pipeline that Germany wants, that Europe wants, and that Russia wants because of an inconvenient invasion? Well, you blow it up. You destroy the infrastructure. So that's where this plan, I'm assuming, started to get hatched. But then it became like, let's blow up all the Nord Stream pipelines. Not just Nord Stream 2, but all of them. So the Nord Stream attack was carried out in response to the invasion of Ukraine, said Hersh. The explosives were detonated after 3 months using a sonar buoy that broadcast a signal that triggered the bombs. So divers go down and they plant the explosives. Then there is a naval exercise. You might recall there was a big naval exercise right around the mid last year in the Norwegian waters. And during that naval exercise, a Norwegian plane dropped a sonar buoy. It's just dropping buoys, no big deal. It's just an exercise. That buoy never got picked up. And then several months later, at a random time, a series of ultra-low frequency tones were broadcast down to the ocean floor in a specific sequence that caused the C4 to explode and blow up the pipelines. So the U.S. was not there when they blew up. No NATO countries were there when it blew up. No naval exercises were happening on the surface when it blew up. It seemed to just blow up out of nowhere, right? There you go. So it makes sense to me that this report is accurate. Of course, the administration and the CIA are both denying the report, which makes sense. You kind of have to. So I'm not faulting the administration there for lying. You have to have some kind of deniability here. So you at least have to put out the facade that we didn't do it. But it certainly looks like this was a U.S. operation, or at least a U.S.-led operation, to impose a dramatic financial blow on Russia, remove Russia's leverage over Europe, which then allows Europe to support Ukraine. And now you've got Europe training fighter pilots and sending tanks and doing all kinds of things to the Ukraine. Why? You notice, remember back when President Trump was in office and he was complaining about NATO not pulling their fair share? How we may as well just dissolve it because it's just the U.S. anyway. And everyone's like, oh, he's going to destroy NATO. 2% of your budget should be military, right? Well, now look at what's happening. Here is an invasion of Ukraine happening on Europe's doorstep. And who is providing 80+% of the money and equipment to Ukraine? The U.S. is. It's not on our doorstep. why isn't Germany and Spain and Italy and France, the UK, why are they not providing 80% and the US is providing 20%? Just interesting food for thought. So I'm putting all these things together and I'm saying, okay, we have an increased, okay, at best, a decreased tolerance for spy aircraft from China. Okay. We have green lasers from space hitting Hawaii, which was kind of weird. I think a Chinese satellite was shooting lasers, and they're saying it was just measurement lasers, like they're just measuring the ocean floor kind of thing, or the surface of the ocean, how high up they were. But that was just weird that you'd measure it right over Hawaii. Okay. Were they mapping? Were they mapping the surface of Hawaii? I don't know. So you got the balloon, you got the satellite with the green lights, you got Ukraine happening, you have Russia preparing a massive advance into Ukraine. In the meantime, Elon comes along and says, we never intended Starlink to be used to control your killer drones that are dropping bombs and grenades on Russian soldiers. Therefore, we are going to remove your ability to use Starlink to fly your drones. Now, Ukraine, Elon said some things a little while ago that in any other frame of reference would have been reasonable things. Like the odds of Ukraine fighting Russia to the death and surviving are pretty minimal. Russia just has like a lot more people than the Ukraine does. Given them the best weapons in the world, they could march the Russians in with sticks and they would win. Just that many more Russians, right? So the idea that the Ukraine can battle Russia at Russia's full capacity and win is kind of silly. So therefore, it makes sense that both sides would want to have some kind of negotiated peace here. Maybe where some land is given up as a concession. And so we go back to the lessons of World War II. And you can't appease an aggressor. We learned that from Hitler. Hitler took Poland and then Hitler wanted more. So Russia's already taken 2 chunks of Ukraine. Now they're trying to take the whole thing. And yeah, they got stopped. So they come to some agreement, gives them some permanence in some of the other areas they just took, and Ukraine gets guarantees of safety, which is the same guarantees of safety they had when they gave up their nuclear weapons. They have to guarantee neutrality, so don't join any organizations that might also protect you. And yes, demilitarize as well. No big guns and stuff around here, so that the next time we want to come through, we don't have to fight you so hard. So I understand what Elon was saying, and it makes sense in the moment, but viewed historically, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, on the other hand, does that mean you fight World War III with a nuclear-armed Russia over Ukraine? Like when you look back in history, like why did World War I start? Like, well, some Serbian dude got shot with a tiny little pistol, and then it was game on. Wow. Why did World War II start? And you start, the World War I reparations were so awful that it caused the German public to be in such a need for a quote-unquote savior that Hitler was able to come to power with his Nazi party, and World War II is born. So you could say that World War I caused World War II in some ways. So now here we are. We have beaten Russia to the point of, literally, John McCain said that Russia is just a dilapidated gas station on the planet Earth. That's all they're good for. And so now we're kind of learning that, the Russian military machine was not what it was made out to be. And China's kind of learning that American air defenses aren't what they're made out to be. The all-seeing American eye isn't so all-seeing. We can slip things through. Americans are learning that we spend a ridiculous amount of money on defense. And instead of detecting things flying into our airspace, we're designing flight suits for pregnant women. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not saying that pregnant women shouldn't be flying combat jets. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is allocation of capital is important in any enterprise. And if you're going to allocate capital to things that are not combat effective things, and your job is to break things and blow things up, but you're spending your money on things that don't break and blow things up, that's a problem. Why would I give you more money? Yet that's what's going to come from all this, is a higher defense budget. And again, it's hard because, you know, I know people in the military, and the way that this works is the Defense Department gets a bigger budget, and people in the military might get a small raise. They get to have more people hired. They can't find people to hire right now because of vax mandates, and because honestly, the number one place where you recruited new military members is from the middle of the country. And the middle of the country is traditionally, not entirely, but traditionally a little more conservative than the urban areas. And when you have the people that you're recruiting go from I will hold this flag high and carry it into any fire to I love this flag, but I don't think the people who are sending me into the fire love the flag. I think they have another motive. I'm not so sure it's a good idea to carry this flag into that fire. That's where everybody's at right now. The trust in institutions, it's like the fourth turning. The trust in institutions has eroded because the institutions themselves have shown how corrupt they are. I mean, it used to be that there couldn't even be the appearance of impropriety. You don't even want to have it look bad. You know, when Carrie Lake is running against the Secretary of State who's in charge of running the election, you don't want it to look bad. So maybe she recuses herself from her duties and puts her deputy in charge, which of course is her deputy. She has complete control. Still, everybody knows that, but at least there's not the appearance of impropriety now. But when you say, no, I'm not going to do that. This is my job, and I'm going to do my job. And my job is to make sure that the person who wins gets elected. So yeah, it's me. It's me. It smells bad, right? It looks bad. So I remember back when I was a kid, you couldn't even have the appearance of impropriety. And now we have the assumption of impropriety in every organization. And now the U.S. population gets to see its military get made fools of by a Chinese balloon. What on earth are we going to do if China invades Taiwan? For real. If we do nothing, we lose access to all of the microchips. If we do everything, there isn't a war game that we don't use nukes that China loses. China wins no matter what. They got the numbers, kind of like Ukraine. So what do you do here? And so I don't know, I just get this feeling, I have a feeling that we're entering a different era. You know how like, you never know when you're entering a different era until in retrospect you look back, like 9/11 changed everything, right? Going to the airport's not even the same anymore. You have people who've never been able to walk someone to the gate and hug them goodbye before they got on the plane. Never in their lives. I remember doing that with my grandmother. But no, you can't do that now. You hug outside the security checkpoint. You say, good luck in security, and then you go sit by yourself for 3 hours while you wait for your delayed plane to take off. Something is changing. I think we're living through a period of time right now that is going to be where the rules are going to be different. So I guess the one thing that I would encourage everyone to do out there, there's a reason I decided to do the security segment today on the show. When the rules are different, obviously the old rules no longer apply, and there is a new set of rules being imposed, a new set of acceptable standards being imposed. Those acceptable standards might be different from the acceptable standards that you would have accepted before. For example, in 1975, if you told somebody that for them to get on an airplane, you were going to have to look at their junk on a scanner, like actually look at it, how many men and women would have gotten on an airplane? And how many would have just said, hell no, you're not? But now you walk through you put your arms up, and then you walk through. Literally, I went through the airport security. My son loves chocolate. I got him like a little piece of fudge from like a bakery where we were staying. And I don't know if they thought it was C4. Literally, like they pulled me aside and they rifled through my stuff and they pull out the chocolate. What is this, sir? I mean, it says fudge right on the box. Fudgesicle. Like, it says fudge. It's fudge. Did you buy this fudge? No, it just magically appeared in my suitcase. And this is what I want to say. But of course, I'm like, no, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I bought the fudge at the Pearl. That's why it says the Pearl at the box. Oh, okay. And then, is it good fudge? I don't know. I haven't tried it. If you'd like to try it, do you need to shave off a little piece to test or something? Do you need to eat? You need a bite? I offered him a bite. That was about as sarcastic as I got. He didn't laugh, so I stopped. I'm like, do you want to taste it and make sure it's real? And he's like, swab. You're like, oh shit. So anyway, excuse my language. I'm sorry. So he scans my fudge, and my fudge passed the scanner and lets me go through. And then of all the stupid things, like we left the hotel, they gave us like a little bag of seasoning salt, and it's really good actually. We used it on some steaks the other day, and it's like rosemary seasoned salt because we were staying on Rosemary Beach, so it made sense. So I have a little bag of salt, and that tripped off every alarm. You would have thought I was carrying like, I don't know, a box cutter or something, or a bomb or something crazy. It was a little bag of salt. And they opened it and they smelled it. And I'm like, it's salt, dude. It is salt. There's no cocaine in it. There's no drugs in there. It's salt. If it was a little bag of coffee, maybe, but it's salt. So that's what we deal with today. Justifying why we are carrying a free 1 ounce bag of salt through an airport checkpoint, or why we're buying our son a little piece of fudge. It wasn't a little, it was like a brick of fudge. But anyway, we wouldn't have put up with that before, but the rules changed. And because of what we were afraid of, we accepted the rule changes. How many of us wore masks during the pandemic? I had to take my uncle to the hospital for something the other day for a procedure he needed done. He needed a ride. And I went into the hospital at Fremont. It's a Methodist Health hospital. And guess what? I had to wear a mask. Now, the staff there, they agree with me 100% because almost exclusively their masks were down under their nose or on their chin or not on at all. You go and hung out in the cafeteria, you buy a cup of coffee. It was old school rules. You buy the cup of coffee, you set the cup of coffee down, you can take your mask off because I'm drinking coffee. Very long coffee drinker. It takes me a long time to consume a cup of coffee. So how many of us put up with that rule change? I admit it. I wore the masks. I had my employees issued masks. Why did I do that? Now, in the service, at the time, we never said this publicly because we would have been pariahs. But in the service centers, literally, it was the least, probably wasn't, it was a great social experiment. Lowest common denominator. If anyone in the room wanted us to wear masks, we would wear a mask. But it was the obvious preference of management to not wear a mask. It was the obvious preference of most people not to wear the mask. So I can see how one person might be like, oh, I don't want to wear the mask. And I did have a couple people that when we did there was 2 employees that I had, or 3 employees that I had that were capable of doing their job remotely for the most part. We don't have a lot of salespeople at Schrock, but with the B2B stuff, you kind of have to have somebody who's an incentivized salesperson to make sure they're taking care of our customers. So we had a salesperson who was refusing to go to any networking meetings, was refusing to leave her house. She was African American. She was a little bit older. She was over 50. So she was in everything that the CDC was telling her was the high risk group of dying from COVID. And literally, she would come in for meetings, and she would have anxiety about coming into the office for a meeting with me and 2 other people in a 2,500 square foot space because she was convinced that she was going to be killed by COVID. So when she was in the room, we all wore masks. And the moment that she left, we took them all off. And we told her we'd take them off. As soon as you're not here, we take these things off. She's like, well, that's not safe. Now the science is coming out and saying, guess what? For the transmission of viruses like COVID and the common cold and the flu, specifically were tested, and the masks had little to zero effect. Now the little is what everyone will latch onto. Well, every little bit helps, right? But 0 to maybe a fraction of a percentage of reduction. Like, it didn't do anything. Nothing significant. So the rules changed, but we changed with the rules. We adapted to the rules because in some cases it just made sense What is the mask hurting me to wear? I will wear the mask. Everyone is calm. Everyone is happy. We can get the job done. We can move forward. So sometimes when a customer comes in with a mask on, we put the mask on. We wanted our customers to be comfortable, even if we thought we were doing something that was completely silly, that made no difference to anybody in the world. It was the impression to our customers that was important. So that's why we put it on. Now, if we're willing to change everything we do over a mask, over the social pressure to wear a mask, what I'm telling you is there's major geopolitical things happening all around us right now. And it's not like little things, like every year you have a couple little things. These are like wars and rumors of wars kind of things. We blew up a sovereign country's energy infrastructure that represented a giant proportion of the sales of their energy product. At the same time, we increased the cost of fuel to all of our allies in the region and then offered to sell them fuel at an increased price. With friends like that, wow. So I guess all I'm saying is when you take all the stories and you put them all together, the Nordstream pipeline, the balloons, and everything else, to me, it gives me a little unease. It makes me realize that the rules are changing. So be on the lookout for changed rules. Things that were acceptable before but aren't acceptable now, or things that were not acceptable before but are acceptable now. Watch for there's going to be a movement and a counter movement about Chinese people, about people from China. There's going to be a movement of people who are very xenophobic, like we need to get those Chinese people out of here kind of thing. And then we're going to have the counter movement from the other side of the political spectrum. That's, you're being a xenophobe, you're just racist, and everything else, all that other stuff that'll come out. So we're going to have this movement, this counter move coming, and they're gonna clash, and then there'll be a big culture war about that too. And yeah, it's gonna get more complex before it gets easier. So I guess that was the reason why during the show today I wanted to have a segment about securing your stuff, because in a world where the rules are changing as rapidly as they are right now, they're changing so quickly that you can't see them changing. Do you remember when was the first time you wore a mask for the pandemic? Do you remember when the last time was that you wore a mask? Well, I remember because I just had to wear one the other day, but if you would have asked me before that, I would have said no, I don't remember the last time I wore a mask due to the pandemic. So it's weird how these things can enter our life and leave our life, and we notice in the moment, but we don't notice in the aggregate. So all I'm saying is, guys, my belief, no, your belief might be different than mine based on your experiences, your story. My belief is that things are changing. Things are changing in a way that will be challenging in the future. I won't say changing in a bad way, because change itself isn't bad, but some elements of change can be difficult, right? So when people are losing their jobs, why is it that I can suddenly interview people from Facebook and Dell that wouldn't have even returned my phone call before? That's how rough the job market is for ultra high-tech guys right now. So the world is changing. The job market is changing. The economy is changing. The debt profile is changing. And the role of government in our lives is like a pendulum, right? A lot of people look at what's happening today and they're like, this is awful. Nothing like this has ever happened before. I mean, they forget about, who was it? Was it Roosevelt that tried to basically dilute the Supreme Court because they were knocking down his New Deal stuff? I think it was. Anyway, sorry, my history is spotting out on me. But basically, the Supreme Court ruled that a bunch of New Deal programs were illegal. You can't do them. And he was so outraged, he's like, well, screw you guys. I'm going to pick the new justices for the Supreme Court, get you up to, if I have to put 100 justices on there to dilute your opinion, to get done what I want to get done, I will do it. And here we are having that same conversation again. It's like the pendulum has swung both ways, right? So what happens in the middle of all of that? There's a Cold War, there's a World War, there's a Cold War, there's a great expansion of American power. All those things happened in the middle there. So if we're on the beginning of a backswing now, where we have hit the point where trust in government, trust in institutions is as low as, from a constitutional perspective, is as low as it's ever been among people who care about those things. And now is something, we're hearing about whistleblowers from the FBI. So that tells me there are still good people in there that are trying to impact the world around them, but just can't. So now we end up looking at all these things happening around us and saying, it's a good thing to be prepared for whatever might be coming without being crazy, without being nuts. You can't stop contributing to your 401k because you think the world's going to end, because then that's a guarantee that it won't, right? So on the other hand, though, should you have more than just enough food for the Super Bowl tonight in your house? Probably. Flint, Michigan's under a boil order again for their water. It makes you, and then you go out and you watch this movie about the chemicals that DuPont pumped in, these the long chain fluorocarbons, the forever chemicals. They get into the water and they never go away. They get into your body and they're with you forever. That's why they call them forever chemicals. Cause all kinds of cancers and issues. A reverse osmosis water system solves that. But gee whiz, have you looked at how much it costs to put one of those in your house? Like if I said I want all the water in my house to be treated, it'd be like $8,000 to install that system. And then like every bath would be treated. It's much more economical to just treat the points of water consumption in your home, like your fridge line or your faucet in your kitchen. We don't really care about your bathing water, right? I mean, I don't know, you sit and soak in a bathtub full of long chain fluorocarbons, and my kids are sitting there putting that water in their mouths and stuff, being stupid in the bathtub like kids do. I kind of do want it all treated, but I don't want to spend $8,000 to do it, so I didn't. Got a water softener instead. I'm sure it's fine. So, I guess where I'm going with all this, guys, is make the preparations that make sense for your family. Make the longer term, take the longer term view on things right now, because in the short term there's so much noise. Oh, look, the stock market rallied 17%. It's going to give it all back. I'm not a stock investor. This is not financial advice. Watch out next week. It's going to give it all back. Unless, of course, we get some great inflation numbers, then, if the numbers are real, who knows what could happen there. So, all right, I've blathered on way longer than I should have here. So let me jump into the comments here and see kind of what you guys are talking and thinking about. See if there's a direction we need to go here. All right. Good to have you guys. Thanks for the audio check. All right, Janine's here. Thomas is here. Pat's here. Cheryl's here. Everybody's checking in. Cheryl and Rich are here. Cheryl, does Rich just follow you around? He seems to always be with you whenever you're here. All right, Bill needs another cup of coffee. I hear that. I'm tired this morning. Where is the 40% discounted service you mentioned on the radio show? It's not on the website. That's a great point. Winston, you have to call into the service center. This is a deal available at Schrock locations. We can also deliver it over the Schrock desk for you. The reason we can't lower the price at secureupdater.com is that Secure Updater is actually sold by several computer repair shops. We built it, and so there's layers to it. So there's, of course, the layer where we provide the service directly to you. Then there's another layer where other computer repair shops can provide Secure Updater to their customers, and then basically they get a piece of the subscription every time. Or I should say we get a piece. We get a very small piece of every subscription that they sell. And it acts as a profit center for their operations. Helps keeps them in business, gives us a wider install base, and lets us keep more people safe. So we can't lower the price on the website because that would be lowering the price for all of our clients as well. And they may not want to do that. They may want to keep selling it at $50 a license. They may not want to give a 40% discount. I'm looking at our numbers and I'm saying of all the months of the year that we have people renewing their Secure Updater, the weakest renewal month of the year is February. So if we were going to do a special offer for people to sign on for new subscriptions that will be renewed annually, February would be an ideal month to do that. So here we are. So there's the business logic behind why it was February, and that's why we can't drop it on the website. So you call into one of the Schrock locations, send us an email. You can go on the Schrock website, pop us off an email, say, please give me a call back. I would like to get the Secure Updater deal, and then we'll get it all taken care of for you. We can do it over the Schrock desk. You don't have to come in. It takes less than 10 minutes to set everything up and get it done, and then you're good to go. Well, they won't be shooting down any Husker red balloons. Ouch, KJ. Good morning to everyone in Schrockville. May you enjoy the game, the food, or the commercials, whatever they're into. Oh, speaking of commercials, thank you, Mark. Do you know that Blockbuster is going to have a Super Bowl commercial? Yeah, like that Blockbuster Video. Apparently, there's one left in Oregon. One Blockbuster in the whole country left. And there's pictures of it, it looks inside exactly like Blockbuster did when Blockbuster was Blockbuster. They haven't changed a thing. There's the drink coolers and the snack coolers. You can buy the buckets of popcorn, and then there's the VHS tapes all over the place. I mean, it is literally the only evidence for Gen Zers that Blockbuster was not just a meme, that it was a real thing. And somehow, I don't know how, they're buying a Super Bowl commercial. So there's going to be a Blockbuster ad during the Super Bowl. I can't wait to see it, just because it's going to be like one of those, like, why? You could have done so much more with this money in other ways, but you spent it on a Super Bowl commercial for a video. And he said that the interest they're getting just from saying they're going to have a Super Bowl commercial, people are coming in to see what this Blockbuster place is all about. They don't even have VCRs. I don't get it. I don't get it. All right. Perhaps as a brilliant tactic, we flood the sky with balloons to deplete our $1 million missiles and then go for the kill over Taiwan. You know, and that was one of the things that this guy was pointing out. They're shooting heat-seeking missiles at these balloons. So there has to be some kind of heat signature, right? But these last two balloons, they said, have not been self-propelled. They're just floating along on the jet stream. So, which again leads me to believe they're weather balloons. But they apparently have enough of a heat signature that a heat-seeking missile can lock onto them. Now, the Sidewinders they're using are a short-range heat-seeking missile. They're apparently a lot cheaper than the long-range missiles we have. So, if anything else, the Defense Department is using the most cost-effective $1 million missiles they have at their disposal to shoot down weather balloons. Oh, how long have I been doing the Compute This show? Oh, let's see, Mark. It didn't start right at the start of Schrock. So I want to say 2001 was when we started. I started it with Kobe Mack in Lincoln on the 1240 AM KFOR. It was in their old building over on Holdridge Street where they used to be before they moved over to the Cornhusker Highway. And I walked into Kobe's office, and I sat down in a chair, and I'm just some stupid kid. And I'm like, Kobe, I think I want to do a radio show. And he's like, yeah, you and everybody else, okay, whatever. And I'm like, I think I could really do it. And I think I could do it about computers, and I could help a lot of people, and it would be a fun show to do, and it would promote my business. And so I talked to him about it, and he took pity on me. And it makes me think, I need to find... He's my Morgan Freeman, I need to find some young entrepreneur that needs like that one thing that I have that I can just give them that's not a big deal to me, but will mean the world to them in their career. I need to find that in life and give that to somebody. I don't know what that is or where it is or how it is. I need to do that at some point in my life, because without Kobe Mack deciding to let me have that 30-minute radio program on KFOR, I would not be sitting here today. This company would not be here today. That man was responsible, as much as I'm responsible, for the creation of this company. So we sat down and we did the radio show, and he did it with me. And I was so terrible because you guys, you saw the show today. I have a script that I follow now to prevent what happened today from happening, where my brain just starts firing off on random things, and I start going down these tangents and rabbit holes. And I would start doing that, and then Kobe would be helpful with things like, so Thor, tell the audience how they can find you if they want to do business with you. Or, so Thor, if somebody wanted to call you, for example, to buy what you're selling, how would they do that? All these basic things that you don't think about doing until you're forced to do them. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm only here for a half an hour. And there were commercial breaks during that show. So it was a half an hour, less commercial breaks, less news. So really it was only like 17 minutes of airtime. And the first time we did the KFOR show, it was me and then one part-time guy. That's how small Schrock was back then. Me and one part-time guy. The show was on a Saturday. And so obviously I couldn't be in the shop while I was on the radio. So he was in the shop. The show aired at 10 o'clock. The shop opened at 10 o'clock. And the very first time I did the show, he had a line out the door and the phone was ringing off the hook. And he called me on my cell phone. And I could say what he said, but I'm not going to repeat it because there could be kids listening. But what in the did you do? Don't you ever do that to me again. I hate you. And literally, at that point, I kind of realized that maybe this guy wasn't great for a service job. But yeah, he couldn't handle the volume. He couldn't handle the sudden influx of phone calls and interest. To me, it was like lightning in a bottle. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was on the radio talking about these things, and people listened. Not all of them, but enough of them. And so then every week we came back and we did it again and again. Then eventually, Kobe, who's a program director, he couldn't sit and do weekend radio shows with me all the time. He has kids too. So he, the news director, Dale, took over the show for a while with me. And it was great. I had the news director with me, right? I mean, the director of news is doing my show. This would be like, back in the day when Chris Wallace was on Fox News Sunday, if you were doing your radio show with Chris Wallace. That it would be like that. I mean, just the credibility of him having that primetime airtime coming with you and then talking with you lends you some of that credibility. And then Dale, then there was some shifting in positions and things like that. And then Chris Goforth took over the show with me in Lincoln. Basically, Chris and I did the show for years together. And then once I was able to get a spot on KFAB, which was not easy to do. It took multiple years and multiple attempts. But once I was able to secure a spot on KFAB, for a while I was doing both shows. So I was doing a Saturday show in Lincoln and then the same show again on Sunday, but it's never the same show twice because the callers are different. And then it takes you into my neurons fire different and then different show. So people were getting 2 Compute This shows every week. I have kids. It's really difficult. Okay, Dad's going to leave, for the 10 a.m. show on Sunday morning, and he gets back Sunday afternoon, and maybe there's enough time left to do something in the day, maybe not. Then Sunday morning, he's going to get up really, really early and go do another radio show, and then he's going to be really tired when he comes home, so he might take a nap, and then there might be time to do something on Sunday or maybe not. If we wanted to go on a vacation, I had to plan multiple radio shows and record multiple shows in advance. It was logistically demanding. That was the first radio show compromise I ever made, was when I said we're going to do one show and we're going to re-air the show at different times. It's not ideal. I would love for the show to air at the same time in every market all the time. It's like when Rush was on the air, his show came on at the same time in every market. And then there were those markets that ran him at night or during times when they didn't have talent to fill airtime or something. They reran his stuff then, and they got it at a discount, I'm assuming, because it wasn't running live. But I didn't like doing that. And unfortunately, syndicating radio is not easy. In fact, there is nobody at iHeart that will do that. So literally, I can't syndicate the show from here unless I build the syndication technology myself, which, given the internet and its capabilities now, I could totally do. But it would require me to be on all the other stations at the same time, and obviously on AM radio stations, Sunday morning is a little tough to get sometimes. A lot of churches. Saturday morning, I can get Saturday morning, but geez, during football season, you lose half your listeners. Problem. College football. So anyway, too late, long story short, 2001 I think is the first year we were on, and that was when everything got started. So anybody who tells you that they've done everything on their own or they've gotten where they're at on their own, they're either their self-awareness is very low, or they're Jesus, they're just amazing. Because I certainly didn't do it on my own, and there's been a lot of people along the way that have taught me things, that have helped me out. Great lesson Kobe Mack once taught me was that it doesn't matter what you're number one at. You have to be number one at something. As long as you're number one at something, nobody remembers what you're number one at. They just remember that you're number one. interesting. So we win Best of Omaha. We win that one hands down every time. We win Best of Lincoln also, but we don't win it in the number one spot because Best of Lincoln is a top three. So the top three are the Best of Lincoln. And of the top three, I called Joy, I'm like, who got the most votes, Joy? And Best Buy wins every time. Every time, because it's a name recognition contest. And Best Buy wins every flippin' time. But we are the number one independently owned computer repair company. And we were winning the Best of Lincoln long before we were winning the Best of Omaha. So for a long time, that lesson from Kobe Mack, I was like, Kobe, it's just killing me that we can't win this. We were doing everything we can do. I mean, literally, I don't know what else we could do aside from put an insert in the weekly newspaper like Best Buy does, so that every week someone's looking at the Best Buy ad and they think, where do I go to buy computers? Well, let's go to Best Buy. You know, what do you do? And he explained to me, Thor, it doesn't matter. Just be number one at something. So be the number one independent computer repair company. So we did. So we are. So yeah, it's Best Buy still wins every year. Every year, Best of Lincoln. I don't know. We're never going to dethrone them. But we outlasted the one in Papillion, so maybe they're not going to show up in Best of Sarpy next year for sure. Okay, let's see here. Perhaps a brilliant tactic. All right, we read that one. Good morning, Go Chiefs. We see where Heidi's loyalties lie. I doubt balloons came over during Trump's administration. They're probably claiming that to make Biden feel better about ignoring a potential threat. You know, Aaron, that's the problem. You don't have faith in the institutions anymore. Remember, there's probably a time in all of our lives that we can remember that if the Department of Justice and the FBI said something, we believed it. Without question. Now, if an FBI agent came to you today and said, Aaron, we need you to do these specific actions for the good of the country. Will you be a patriot and do this for the good of the country? Don't tell me there's not a little bit of your brain that's thinking, am I really doing something that's good for the country? Or what? What are you asking me to do here? You know, the trust isn't there. The trust is gone. And anyone who's ever lost trust will tell you it's virtually impossible to rebuild. And when you do rebuild it, it's rebuilt extremely slowly through deeds and not words. So that's how it's going to have to be rebuilt, by prosecuting Hunter Biden, by holding administration bureaucrats personally responsible for screw-ups that changed the results of elections and did things. I mean, that's the only way back. The only way back is to restore trust, and the only way to restore trust is to show that you are even-handedly applying justice to everybody, regardless of their political affiliation. And of course, we're all humans. We all sin. We all make mistakes. We all have our biases. I get that. But when you have a world right now where journalism school is actually, there's a theory in journalism schools right now, in colleges, that objectivity is the problem in journalism. People's expectation that journalists are objective is what the problem is. Not the fact that the journalists are biased, because everybody's biased, but the fact that we're expected to hide our bias. That's the problem. The car movie was Gung Ho. You're right. It was Michael Keaton in Gung Ho. You're right, KJ. That movie, I was a kid when I watched that movie, and I thought that was such a cool movie. I was like, look at him go. They're peeing in bottles to stay on the assembly line longer. And my parents let me watch that stuff. It was the 80s, you know. I also watched Space Pirates, too. Yeah, don't let your kids watch Space Pirates. Or Ice Pirates. It was Ice Pirates. That's what it was, Ice Pirates. They could have launched the balloons from inside the United States instead of launching them in China and hoping the balloons would make... Yeah, why not launch them here? I've got a lead. So we'll talk about cryptocurrency here in a second, too, because I'm sure if I scroll down far enough, someone's going to say, so what's going on with crypto? But there's a guy that I know that wants to open a Bitcoin mine in Beatrice, Nebraska. It's a pretty good-sized mine, like 500 units to start. Maybe I'll be involved in helping him deploy them or maintain them. Maybe not. We don't know. It would be something where he probably hires Schrock to do that, and then of course I would probably head that team. But he's looking for investors, and so he sent me his investor prospectus, and I'm reading through it, and it's all very solid. There's this guy's experience exploring for oil and things like that. He's done it his whole career. Very successful by everything I can regard. Lives in Colorado. Looking great, right? And in the conversation, he just lets it slip that the building that he's going to put this in is owned by a Chinese national. And it's been vacant for 10 years. So he's, pretty sure he's going to get the lease he wants. Why would a Chinese national have a vacant 60,000 square foot warehouse in Beatrice for a decade and continue to own it? I want to be watching for balloons, for Bitcoin balloons. No, it's just one of those. This is what I mean. Like, this is what's changing. Now you're like, if it was an Italian national, would you be like, why is that Italian guy owning that warehouse? Maybe he's mafia. I don't know. Or why does that Spanish guy own the warehouse? I don't know. Why does the Chinese national own the warehouse? Do you see how different it makes you feel? Why is that? Where did that come from? Interesting. All right. Secure Updater is 40% off online and in-store. Yep. All right. This might be of interest to the Schrock Nation. NASA's scientific balloon FAQs. Yep, there's a lot that doesn't add up with what we were told as far as it being a weather balloon. It was not. The first one was not a weather balloon. U.S. needs to invest in factories and jobs in Mexico and South America, keep the migrants at home, and give Americans more opportunities. KJ, that's one of the ways that, in fact, there is a solar farm going in Mexico right now, or maybe it's a wind farm. It's some kind of green energy farm that the United States is completely funding for Mexico. However, the United States is prohibited from bidding on the contracts to construct it in Mexico. But we're going to fund it. And we don't get anything from the operation of it. And the loans are also interest-free. So the challenge that we have here, okay, America can make anything it wants. America has the natural resources to produce everything that's produced in the world right now. What is stopping America from doing this? It's the cost of labor. It's the cost of labor, guys. American workers expect to be paid too much for work that has a low yield result. If you work in an injection molding factory, the guy who makes the mold gets paid a lot of money. But the people who actually inject the plastic and then pull the things out on the factory assembly line, or the people that fill the cereal boxes at Kellogg's, they make so much money doing that in America that you just can't afford to do that in America. That you're going to do that in another country where the labor is a lot cheaper. So what's the way out of this? Again, the rules are changing. What's the way out? AI and robotics come together. You're seeing this in the automotive industry right now. AI and robotics driving a car. AI and robotics responding to green lights and red lights in traffic scenarios. AI and robots will come together in manufacturing eventually and remove the need for people. That's the goal. That's why you drive through McDonald's right now and the robot answers the box, not the human. My niece is looking for a summer job. And I thought, I could hire her over at Schrock, but we don't really like to hire people that are only going to be with us for a few months and then leave. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And we don't really have piddly work that we'd have a kid come in and do for a few months and leave. So, but she doesn't want to get a job at McDonald's because she wants something better than that. First job ever. And she's like, I'm too good for McDonald's. And I love my niece, of course, and of course I would want her to have as good of a job as she could get. But when you walk in the door and you say, I'm going to be here for 3 months, and I want a job better than McDonald's, and I want you to hire me and pay me and train me, and then I want to leave. What do you think you're going to find? I mean, she was like, maybe I should work at Starbucks or Scooters or something. That they'll take you for 3 months. Doesn't take a lot of training to make coffee, and then, maybe they have an employee in the future they can tap into. Maybe if someone for part-time during school, whatever. So the expectation of the American worker is so expensive right now that you can't make stuff in America. You just can't do it unless you can automate it. And if you can automate it, then you don't need the worker. Then the worker doesn't get paid. Then the worker doesn't have a job. Then the worker can't buy things. So then the guy that makes the widgets with the automated factory is going to sell his widgets to who? That's a problem. And here comes the explanation. Well, that's why we need a universal basic income. So I am not advocating for any of these things. Trust me. I don't know any more than you do how it's going to end up. What I do know is that the rules are changing. And so it's a great time to be alive. You're going to see radical change. One time I asked my grandmother before she passed what her earliest memory was. And she said she remembered as a little girl her first time she ever rode in a car. And she thought it was so pretty that it had curtains that you could close on the windows. Little curtains. And I'm like, take that memory. Now, she passed, 10 years ago. So take that earliest memory that she had and compare that just to the advent of cruise control in a vehicle or satellite television. Air travel. I mean, the world has changed so much in that one lifetime. Sometimes we don't realize how much the world's going to change in our lifetime. The 2 to 6 p.m. slot is open at KFAB, Roger?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. Somebody's asking me if I'm going to go for it.
Oh.
Another Roger. Roger's asking me on here if I'm going to... Wait a minute.
No.
Like,
you already got a good gig.
Yeah, I do. My wife had a very... Okay, so there was a point where I was considering something, and I was like, okay, maybe I could do it, maybe not. My wife's like, Thor, the way that your neurons fire, one misfire is all it takes for you to ruin your entire radio career. And when you ruin your entire radio career, you won't just ruin your radio career, but you're going to ruin your radio show. And your radio show is what brings you in business. So as soon as you say something controversial or stupid, which eventually you're going to have to do because you're just like a little Tucker Carlson just screwed into a tighter bottle, once that happens and you say something that controversial and then you get the boycotts, then our whole family is screwed. So the answer is probably no. But you can fill in from time to time if you'd like to assuage your... Maybe this would be a future career for you after you're retired. I'm like, when am I going to retire? When am I going to be done working? Who knows? In France, they're going to screw over those workers big time, make them retire at 62 instead of 60. Yeah, they're having riots in the street. The 60-year-olds are rioting. They're not changing it for them. They're changing it for the people who aren't retired yet. And I guess imagine, in America, they just say, they just change the rule, and like AARP complains, and then that's the end of it. Like, yeah, it's now 65 and a half. What? Wait, why? What? Next. Examples of societal change. Walmart and Sam's makes us bag our own purchases, then assumes consumers are not honest and inspects the receipts before they leave the store. Well, KJ, you're absolutely right. When I was a kid, my mom saved on our grocery bill by going to a grocery store in town called Bag and Save. Because you bagged your own groceries, that saved them money, so you got to save on your grocery bill. Well, I go to Hy-Vee, and they will bag your groceries for you if there's somebody standing around. And from time to time, they do look at your receipt. The problem with automated cashiers, number one, is there are dishonest people that will purposefully not scan things. Number two, these are not professional cashiers. Some of them have never even had a job before. Some of them, like my niece, might want to get a job, but they don't want to get a job as a cashier because they want a better job than that. So they're going to beep things through. I do it myself. How many times am I going to beep the bananas before I learn that you have to type the code in for the bananas and put them on the scale? And if you beep the bananas, it makes the little red light blink, and somebody's got to come over and be like, silly rabbit, and take the bananas off my ticket because it's an unknown item, and now I'm stuck. How many times am I going to do that? I do it all the time. Or worse is like when you hold up the container and you're looking for the PLU number and you're moving it around, and then it goes beep, and you're like, oh man, son of a biscuit. And it happens all the time. Grapes, you don't scan the grapes. Grapes are by weight. Don't scan the bag. So yeah, you're absolutely right, KJ. The world is changing, and yeah, they assume you're not honest. But the funny thing is the people at the door aren't really inspecting what you're doing. They're not counting the number of items in your card. They're randomly scanning 4 things and seeing if all 4 things are on the receipt. It's a compliance check to keep honest people honest. That's what my dad used to say. You don't lock your car door to prevent someone from busting your window and stealing stuff. That's why you don't leave stuff out in plain sight in your car. And say, well, I locked the door. I had a guy who I worked with when I was a teenager who said, I know people who break out your window for a handful of change. So, yeah, you don't leave stuff laying out in your car, even if you lock the door. Because why do you lock the door? You lock the door to keep the honest people honest. So, you check the receipts to keep the honest people honest. There is somebody checking. You might get caught. There is a possibility. And therefore, people don't do it, or they do it less, or they don't do it intentionally. So yeah, I mean, then that's the question. Is your shrinkage more or less than the cost of having cashiers? Now, what if you had a robotic cashier that could scan everything like with an arm, like a human? And then you had another robotic cashier that understood, unlike the cheerleaders that fill in from time to time at Hy-Vee, that cold stuff goes in the same bag as other cold stuff. And bread goes on top, not on the bottom. And, these little things. I worked at Walmart when I was a kid. I watched the CBTs on how to bag groceries, the computer-based training. And it was like, yeah, you don't put the chemicals in with the fruit. Like, you don't put the Dawn dish soap on top of the bananas. It's not a good idea. You keep chemicals in a separate bag. Even if there's just one chemical, you put it in a whole separate bag. And you never double bag because that increases costs. But now if you cut the thickness of the bag in half and I double bag, is it just the same cost? I don't know. You notice they've done that? You ever had your bags rip out now? The funny thing is, okay, so Hy-Vee has paper or plastic, right? So you get the paper sacks sometimes. Those paper sacks are a marvel of engineering, I have to say. Because if you have them on the seat of the truck and you're grabbing the bags at like chest level and you're moving them toward you, if you pull one of those paper handles sideways, it just rips right off the bag. Just pops right off. Like it's glued and it's pop. What the heck? Is that Elmer's? But if you pick the handles directly up, they can hold like 1,000,000 pounds. Like we could put our fruit basket in there and put a balloon on that and fly that Hy-Vee bag. I mean, it might even go further than Hy-Vee's. It's amazing technology. I'm just saying, if you haven't noticed. Don't pull the bags to the side. They'll rip. All right. If they can get you to believe absurdities, they can get you to commit atrocities. Yeah, I could see that. Let's see. The Salem witch hunts, Nazi Germany, etc. Yeah, well, the CDC published the study on May 5th of 2020. No one wanted to believe it. Yeah. I still remember the meme, like, okay, so if 2 men are facing each other and they're not wearing underpants and they pee on each other, they get pee all over each other. But if they're both wearing underpants and they pee, they don't get pee on each other. There's so much to unpack there. I don't know where. This is why I can't have a radio show, guys, because I'd be like, so let me start with, are we talking boxers or briefs? Are we talking sacks or are we talking Tommy John? Like, what kind of, what's the weave? Is it a cloth weave? What is this? No, you see, you can't do that. All right, the physical rehab hospital I've been trapped in for the last 8 months. It's been 8 months. Still has employees wearing the mask. Visitors still have to wear the masks, but residents like me don't have to wear the masks. Yeah. Well, maybe you're grandfathered in, Aaron. Those who were here pre-pandemic. Come on, Aaron. I hope you're doing better. I hope you're improving. I know you kind of make some comments about like there's not a lot of rehab happening in the rehab facility, but all I have to say is just don't write the check a couple times and they'll get you out of there real quick. It'll be amazing. Let's see. One of the absurdities I mentioned, the masked COVIDians do not follow their science but their own written scriptures. It was Roosevelt. Okay, thank you. For some reason I was blanking out on that when I said that, and I'm like, oh great, I'm going to say the wrong president's name and I'm going to look like an idiot. Thank you for coming to my rescue, Aaron. An AI expert predicts 50% of software programs will lose their jobs to AI. Well, yeah, because software is predictable. You write a function once and you can use it a million times. It's just changing of variables. That's a very easy thing to automate. Harder things to automate are creative things, where we want to take a new technology and integrate it in a new way. That takes a whole different level of AI. The rest is just automation on the lower level. But AI, like ChatGPT, has the ability to create whole code from nothing. And that's what makes it so interesting and special. And coders are actually using it to help reduce their dev time on projects right now. So you have to check its work. It's not perfect, but it's a lot easier to tweak something that exists than to make something fresh and clean and new. So if ChatGPT can make 99% of the way and you just have to read and double check it, kind of makes a lot of sense. While on Air Canada plane in Canada last fall, we were informed if we didn't wear masks, we would be turned over to Chicago police on arrival. 2 days later, the mask wearing was stopped. Yeah, they were pretty serious about it. That was the thing. It was like people were asked to wear them, and then they were told to wear them, and then they were threatened if they didn't wear them. And it was just a natural progression until finally, what stopped it? Did people just decide one day, like, was it like in China where they just said, we're not staying in our apartments anymore, go to hell? And the authoritarians were like, oh boy, okay. Guess what? New rules. You don't have to stay in your apartments anymore. Have a great day. When did the mask wearing stop officially? Like, it was interesting. All right, Ronald, I knew you were going to ask me about crypto changes. I know, and I thought about you too because I said, I might have a couple listeners to compute this, Roger. That it was another Roger, yet another Roger, that might be interested in investing in a Bitcoin mine if there was an opportunity to do that. So he sent me over the investment brochure and I looked through it. So if anyone listening is interested in something like that, I can put you in touch with Roger and he can separately share that with you. I have a confidentiality agreement, so I can't share the prospectus thing with you, but he can send it to you as a potential investor and all that jazz. If that's something you wanted to be involved with the Bitcoin mine. I just threw out an old $15 card from Blockbuster. Julie, you could have gone all the way to Oregon and bought like a bucket of like Pop Secret or a bottle of like Coca-Cola Classic. Could have been special. Let's see here. A first description of the object over Canada. I haven't read that one yet. I'll have to read that one in a minute here. I'm guessing someone is launching balloons with radar reflectors and watching us go nuts. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do. I don't believe anything that the DoD tells us. So that's a hard way to live, though, isn't it? Like, you want to be able to believe that your government tells you things that are true. You want to be able to believe that the sources of information that you have are accurate. But like I said, once trust is blown, how do you take someone like Robin who doesn't believe anything the Department of Defense tells us, which is, of all the government agencies, the most trusted one? How do you get that trust back? Do you have to fight a war successfully? Let's see. One question that should be asked is why the F-22 pilots didn't use their 20mm cannon to shoot down the most recent targets a lot cheaper than AIM missiles. Steve, what I've been told was apparently there was a weather balloon at some point that was traveling toward China that was going to infiltrate Chinese airspace, and Americans and Canadians were trying to shoot the weather balloon down before it entered Chinese airspace as a courtesy. So they flew up and they fired like 20,000 rounds of 20mm into the balloon, and it punched like a lot of holes, but it takes a long time for that balloon to deflate. Now, a heat-seeking missile isn't seeking in. Well, that was one of the questions they asked on Fox, and the guy got all like, "I can't go into the classified nature of the missile seeker system," but basically what he said was the missile's smart enough to say that's the heat source and that's the balloon, so go up and pop the balloon. So the missile exploding is basically shredding the balloon and then causing it to immediately fall, as opposed to poking a lot of holes in the balloon. It doesn't pop like a party balloon. You poke a bunch of holes in it, and the gases slowly kind of seep out. So that's why they're not using the 20 millimeter cannon. I don't know if they can carry enough ammo to do it in one sortie. I would call shenanigans on anyone asking me to do something for the good of the country, especially now. Too many protesters too many people trying to scam people. Yeah, this is true. I mean, yeah, I don't know. So like, if you were running a business and you were renting a building from a Chinese national, and suddenly the FBI came to you and said, you know, your landlord may be involved in, maybe a People's Republic spy. We need to put these monitoring devices in your business so that we can monitor his communications, and we need you to be quiet about it. What do you do? Yeah, right? I mean, it's like you want to believe the FBI. You want to believe that they're trying to stop Chinese spying. You don't want to believe that your good, honest landlord is a Chinese spy, though, because if he's guilty, then what happens to my lease, you know? But you want to be able to believe your government. You genuinely do. At least I do. The problem is that the trust has been violated there so many times that it's not enough to tell us now. You actually have to show. So it's not show. Why won't they show us the pictures of the things they're shooting down? They've got gun camera footage of these balloons. Why can't we see them? You don't have to explain the footage. You don't have to analyze the footage. You don't have to say something that's not true about the footage. They maybe have to walk back later. That's the reason everyone gives. Is like the Biden administration doesn't want to do something that they're going to have to walk back later. But show the picture and then let all the news people be stupid about it, and then you can come out with your analysis later and look like the smart people in the room. Why not? Imagine we ran the Gulf War this way. I mean, wow. CNN wouldn't have been born. CNN cut their teeth on the Gulf War, if you might recall. All right. I love ice pirates. Oh, Aaron, you would be the one that's seen Ice Pirates. You would be that person. Oh, my gosh, that movie. But I watched that when I was a little kid. Like, I don't think I was supposed to watch that movie. Talk to Scott Voorhees about subbing in on afternoons on KFAB. Well, I don't know what would I talk about during the After Schrock then? You know, I'd shoot my wad on a Wednesday afternoon, and I'd come in here and be like, so, let's talk about the speed of memory in dual channel versus single channel. Like, nobody wants to hear about that. I'm convinced at least our kids will see flying cars dominate transportation. Yeah, it could definitely happen. There could be, I mean, it makes sense. Alrighty. Brad says, hi, Roger Olson. People don't realize how much work it takes to do 1 hour of radio, much less 4. LOL. He's agreeing with you. All right. Aaron says, been doing my own version of PT for the last few weeks. Freaked out some of the residents and the staff by doing sit to stands in front of the nurses station. They're all shocked at how tall I am, 5'4". So you're like, if you're not going to come back here and do my PT, I'm going to stand outside of your nurse station and do squats, baby. Aaron, you are full of moxie. You are somebody. All right, there'll be 2 different national anthems played at the game tonight. P.S. I got flagged at the community standards message for that. Really? They flagged you for that? For that comment, though, that there will be 2 different national anthems played at the game tonight? Yeah, Facebook hasn't seen the Twitter light yet. Let's put it that way. All right, so crypto. What's going on with crypto real quick before we wrap, because I've been like way long here. There is an all-out assault going on against cryptocurrency by the U.S. government right now. They are attacking banks. Now, you might recall during the Obama administration, basically, it was difficult. You couldn't buy Bitcoin with like major bank cards. Like if you had a debit card from U.S. Bank and you went to a Bitcoin exchange like Coinbase and tried to buy Bitcoin, your card wouldn't work, and it would say suspected fraud. And you'd call Coinbase and you'd say, that's a restricted transaction. You can't buy Bitcoin with your card. Sorry. Well, how did those rules come to be? Well, in a back room, Jamie Dimon got along with Barack Obama. Joe Biden may have been in the background there saying, this is the big effing deal. It could have been, I don't know. But they got together and said, Jamie, this Bitcoin stuff, we're concerned about it. And it sure would be a shame if we had to, consider your bank a higher risk profile for FDIC insurance than it already is at because you're accepting these Bitcoin transactions. I would hate to see that happen. Anyway, how are the kids? And Jamie Dimon got 10-4 loud and clear, Roger, over and out. No more Bitcoin transactions. So it was all done with a wink and a nod in the back room back then. There was no rules. There was no oversight. There was no official SEC stuff, no FDIC stuff. It was all just behind the scenes. Now it's not. Now banks are being told if they continue to do business with firms that buy and sell Bitcoin, their risk profile will be increased by the FDIC, causing them to pay a higher FDIC insurance premium, as well as reducing their ability to obtain funds in the event of a bank run. That is why Binance this week changed their US dollar withdrawal policies. You can't withdraw US dollars unless you're moving over $100,000 because no bank will touch it. Now, Silvergate was a crypto-friendly bank. Silvergate was heavily involved in FTX, and that's the cover that's flying over all this. We're trying to protect people from losing all their money in FTX-like scams, and Silvergate, we're sure, had something to do with FTX's ability to steal all that money and move it around and do all these nasty things. And if Silvergate wouldn't have been able to support FTX's banking, well, then FTX would have never happened, and all these people wouldn't have lost their money. Voila. In the background, while this is happening, FTX bankruptcy attorneys are clawing back political donations. So you may have heard the stories that Sam Bankman-Fried gave tons of money, especially to Democrats, some to Republicans, but the 98% vast majority of the money he gave went to Democrat candidates. In fact, and some people single-handedly credit him with getting Joe Biden elected. He gave so much money to Biden and Biden super PAC campaigns that he funded a lot of it. Well, now the bankruptcy attorneys handling the FTX bankruptcy are going back to the people from just this last election cycle that received political contributions, the politicians and the political action committees, and they're saying, you need to return the money that was given to you. You have until February 28th to do so. If you fail to do so, we may sue you, and then interest will start accumulating on the amount you owe based on the action of this letter. Now, if you are a politician that doesn't want to be soaked up in the taint of FTX, and they gave you $500,000, you're going to find a way to get $500,000 from another donor and give that money back. And that's what FTX is counting on. The super PACs might be a little bit different. The political action committees might be a little harder to claw back from, but they got the majority of the money. So they're bigger targets. They're bigger fish to go after. There's probably going to be some kind of a settlement there where they get a part of the money back. But the whole thing is they're trying to reclaim this money that was basically stolen money from FTX account holders that was given to Democrat politicians in exchange, and some Republican, crypto-friendly Republican politicians, in exchange for a lack of regulation on Bitcoin. Well, now that that money is gone, guess what's coming back? Negative regulation of Bitcoin. There was a story out, and not just Bitcoin. There was a story out that, what was the name of the organization that got, I can't think of the name now. Crypto company that was running basically an earn program, a yield generating program. The SEC came out and fined them $50 million and said that was an illegal securities program and you shouldn't have done it. Guess what else is a yield-based program based on staking your Ethereum in order to receive a return on your investment called a yield instead of mining with energy. Yeah, Ethereum. So is the SEC now saying that Ethereum is illegal in the United States? They can't enforce it. They can stop banks from transacting in the crypto, buying and selling. You can't buy Ethereum now. Well, you can't really figure out what coin you're buying at Coinbase. I can buy Bitcoin and then trade it for Ethereum. So maybe if you want to have your custodial status approved by the SEC, you don't allow that to happen. So you can see how there's like they're regulating right now based on individual company and circumstances opposed to an industry. It's a recipe for failure. It's a recipe for entrepreneurs to find a way around it. You take your Bitcoin earnings and you change them into yuan, and you use the yuan to buy gold, and then you move the gold to America and you sell the gold for dollars. Boom, you got your dollars. So the entrepreneurs will find a way around this, and they'll find a way to make money getting around it, because the government can't keep up. This stuff moves too quick. So I guess one of the things that I would look for, and I've been saying this for a while, in the midst of a 17% run, I've been saying Bitcoin's going to drop. It could drop as low as $10,000. We saw it drop $1,000 this week. I think if we have some bad market news as well, Bitcoin is not as correlated to the market as it has been in the past, but there is so much FUD that's coming for Bitcoin between Tether, questions about whether Tether is actually a one-for-one representation stablecoin, all the way through to FTX stuff, is Binance even solvent? Silvergate, the Bitcoin Trust, does it actually have the Bitcoin it says it has? Well, now they're getting sued. Digital Coin Group runs the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and Digital Coin Group is being sued by investors in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust because they don't believe that they have the Bitcoin. And they're demanding proof that the Bitcoin exists, which is literally easy to give and completely safe. They said they don't want to reveal that because of security concerns surrounding the custody of the Bitcoin. That's all custodied at Coinbase anyway. So yes, you can give a public key. It gives you no access to the private key whatsoever. It's like having the username and not the password. You can't steal someone's Bitcoin without both. So don't give up your password. And you can't guess the password. The password's hard. The password's very hard. So that's what's going on in crypto. I would be wary of buying crypto right now. I would be a seller of crypto right now if I had any left, but I already sold it all. So I am eagerly awaiting my opportunity to buy back in at much lower levels. That's my hope anyway. Very eager, like worried it's not going to happen eager. Which is why I don't trade, because I don't have the emotional fortitude to be like, just be patient. All right, I was a little too when I saw Ice Pirates. I think it may have been a remake of Galaxina? No, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe you're getting actual gold and not paper gold. There are fees to buy, sell, and store gold. Just things to think about. Oh no, I would be getting actual gold and I would be paying the fees, because when you think about it, there's a fee to withdraw your Bitcoin into U.S. dollars as well. It's usually a 1.5% fee. So for the ACH transaction, so you're losing money on the transaction anyway. So if you have a way to purchase and to change this money, like I remember when McDonald's first opened up in Russia, and you still couldn't directly convert rubles into dollars. So McDonald's would sell all these burgers in Russia, earn all these rubles, then they'd go buy vodka, and then they would export the vodka to the United States, where then the vodka was sold, and that's how McDonald's recouped their money. McDonald's was selling vodka. So entrepreneurs will be finding ways. There's a way to do it. All right, guys, time to wrap it up. It's been way too long here, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Stay tuned next week, guys. Next Sunday at 7, we'll be back for Compute This, another episode going there. Secure Updater sale is going on through the end of February, so you have a little bit of time left to go on that. I want to remind all the guys out there, if you have not ordered flowers yet, you need to do it before the end of the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, it is too late for delivery. You won't get them in time. So make sure you take a moment, order your flowers this morning. Just friendly reminder, keeping the ladies happy. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you being here. And we'll see you all again next weekend for another edition of Compute This.